Hi everyone, I'm Jody Barrows with The Square in a Square. Welcome to our live webinar today on January 20th of 2021. Now I know we have a lot of new webinar watchers, so just so you know, each Wednesday during this year of 2021, for as far as we can plan, we are going to have a free Wednesday teaching. And so once you sign up for the free Wednesday webinars, then you don't have to sign up again. And if you happen to miss the live play of it, you can go back in and watch the replay for it. Now, all of our Wednesday webinars are going to build on each other to further and increase your quilt knowledge. So we're starting out with some really simple, basic things here in the beginning for the month of January, and we'll be progressing on and building your knowledge and your skill as we continue throughout the year. Now, as we continue to get 75 to 100 emails a day, in many of those emails, not only are they asking questions on how to do something or where can I find something or any of those things, they're also telling us how much they have really appreciated our webinars that we have done for the past year. All of 2020, we started out in January doing what we called Stash Busters, and we have the hanging lanterns and a spool one and a crazy log cabin that you can do with any size of strips. And then our pandemic hit in March, and we really started in hot and heavy doing things multiple times a week. And through all of that, we found out how much comfort the webinars were to people and how much they needed them. And in particular, just in one email this week, we heard about the hardship of one of our customers through illnesses, through jobs, through lockdowns, just through all of the different stress of normal everyday life, but also the added stress that we have from our world today. And it just really encouraged me that how all of this can kind of push us over the edge, and that just how much our webinars are needed to help keep us motivated and excited and to keep our skills moving forward. And so that just really encourages Steve and I to keep going and to keep teaching and to keep providing you with fun and excitement for your quilt life. So that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to teach a really simple quilt called Soldier's Comfort. It's a project that I've had around for a long time, but it continues to be an old favorite and an awesome one. But before we get into the teaching of it, I want to remind you to keep your notebook. I want you to have a Wednesday webinar notebook, and I want you to take notes, and I want you to put the day in it. Because not only are we teaching the different things that you need to know about making this quilt, but there'll be a lot of different nuggets in the teaching, a gold nugget that you'll be able to apply to other projects that you're doing, because it's not just learning the square and a square system or learning a quilt. It's about using that project to increase all of your knowledge and your skills and to hone your piecing and to make you a better quilter. I believe that with what we teach and with the square and a square system, that every quilter can become the piecer that they've always dreamed about, and that master quilts are just a skill away. So keep your notebook so that you can go back and know where to find those certain things. As much teaching as we've done in the past year and that we have planned to do this year, it's really hard to go back and say, oh, in so-and-so webinar we taught that, because we teach a lot of different things in every webinar, not just the one thing. Something that we continue to get a ton of requests for is the Hunter Star. So I'm going to briefly show you the Hunter Star again today too, but we've already taught it in the past year, probably at least 6 times. So make sure you keep good notes so that you can go back and find those things. We love to help you. We're happy to help you, but sometimes it's difficult. And with as many emails as we get, we want to be able to get to you as soon as possible. So that also brings me up to our text number. We have a text number that you should have written in your book at the front, and it's 817-713-2879. Now, if you have a question about an order or something that's techie about finding something, you probably need to email Steve on that, because I'll have to go to him to answer that question. But if you want to send me a picture of your quilt, you have a question about something that you're making, any of that text number will help free up some of that clog that we have with our emails and help me be able to get to your technical quilt question more quickly. And we have been using this text number all of this year, and I love it. I think it's working well, and we're able to get to you guys quickly and get your questions answered. One question that people ask a lot is, do you and Steve ever sleep? Because you can text us at weird times of the day or night, and we come back pretty quickly with you. The answer is anytime from about 10 o'clock at night to 4 o'clock in the morning, we're probably not going to answer your text unless for some reason I can't sleep and I'm up and I happen to see it. But anyway, so you can get an answer anytime after 4 a.m. almost, or up until 8 to 10 o'clock at night. So that's exciting that we're there for you to help you. Now, make sure you have your notebook. Very, very important to keep good notes and keep your notebook going. Keep yourself organized. It'll help motivate you. It'll keep you from, I see a lot on other Facebook pages about people talking about how that they've lost their mojo. They, don't have any excitement in their sewing room or whatever. And I think sometimes you can just get overwhelmed in your sewing room because it looks like a Texas tornado has come through, or you don't know where to find what you're wanting to do. So I think keeping yourself organized is a great way to keep your mojo going. And of course, watching the Wednesday webinars will help that. It's easy to get down and depressed in the time of year that we're in, being winter and cloudy, and I looked on the calendar the other day. We're only 8 weeks away from changing our clocks back, so that's always exciting. Spring is coming, not going away. Okay, the Soldier's Comfort Quilt. You can see that up here on the board. This is our new Soldier's Comfort. It's made with our brand new blue floral. Now that brings me to the fabric sale, which it was going to stop today on Wednesday, but because we have more information for you about some of the quilts that we're going to be making, we're going to extend the fabric sale to midnight Sunday night. So late in the night, Sunday night, will be the end of our fabric sale. And on our florals, if you order 3 yards or more, then you're going to get those on the sale price. And if you order $150, then you're going to get free shipping in the U.S. If you're out of the U.S., then we'll do a ratio type thing on the shipping. Steve will help you with that. So in this quilt here, we've used 3 yards of the blue floral. And so that right there is just your sale right there of 3 yards. So I've told people when they go in and purchase the florals that, to purchase at least the 3 yards to get the sale price, but any amount that you can go up from that, we're going to keep making quilts, and the new fabric that we have coming this year will mix in with our checks, our tattered and torn, our florals, our stars, our backgrounds. All of these will just continue to be mixing together. So these first ones will really highlight the florals with main blocks and borders, and then we'll just be mixing them in with our new ones that are coming later this year. So don't miss out on the sale. The only time the fabrics go on sale is when we get that first new shipment. And we've had this sale going since January 1, so that's a long time to have it. So you have plenty of time to get that on sale. So here is our Soldier's Comfort quilt. Now it's called Soldier's Comfort, and like I said, I've had this pattern for quite an extensive length of time. We've gone in and reworked the pattern, and it's available for you on the website specifically for the colors and everything that you're seeing here today. It is a great pattern because you have a wonderful opportunity in 2 places to highlight a fabric that is so beautiful you don't want to cut it up. So here you can see how we've used it in big 6-inch borders. You could even go as wide as 8-inch borders if you want to give that blue floral even a wider, beautiful expanse on the outside of the quilt. And then inside here, these are 8-inch sewn blocks. And so you have a wonderful place to highlight a fabric. And over the years, we've done a lot of different prints that needed a place to really stand their ground and really show up good in a quilt and not be cut down. So we had this quilt plus another one called Disappearing Star that really allowed that to happen. So here we have our solid block, our solid blue floral, and then we have just a real simple pieced block with just 4 squares in the corner, a rectangle in between, and a solid blue floral once again in the middle. So it really gives an overall great look for that blue floral. Really highlights it well. And of course, you could go in and do this quilt with red, or you can do it with the dirt. And if you want to do that, we'll go in and talk about colors and where we would substitute pieces at the end. If you want to know that, then just text a comment down in there that you want to know, and I'll take the time to do that today in the video. Before we get into the cutting of the quilt, because it's really so very, very simple. Now, the Soldier's Comfort in the Premium Club, if you're a Premium Club member, go to your Premium Club area, go to the download section. It's in the download section, and you can download the pattern for free. If you're not a Premium Club member, then you can purchase the pattern on the website. Just go to squareinasquare.com. And then also we have kits in the blue. I haven't made up kits in the red or in the dirt. If you want me to do that, I can do that. But the kit that is on the website for you to purchase is in the blue. And then also, anytime you purchase backing to go with your quilt at that time, you get a special price on your backing. So don't miss out on that. And you can choose the blue floral, the black star, or the black check for that. So let's just look here, down here at the table here for a minute, Steve. I've got this one on top, and I haven't talked about it yet. On the first webinar that we did on Wednesday this year, so I think that was the 5th of January, we taught this Road to Nowhere. And so this was a very simple quilt. We used the dirt in it. Of course, this is the split rail section. And we taught the 4-patch and 9-patch. So if you haven't watched the video from January 5th, this is the quilt that we highlighted. And then in the next video, which was last week, we taught basics of the square and a square system, and we're going to do a little bit of that today at the end also. Now here are 2 other quilts that we've had over the past where we have used a bigger print. It was some of our Civil War soldiers, and we used a bigger print in these. So you can see how this quilt, this pattern, this design really highlights this big area in the 8-inch and in the borders for your larger prints. And this is also a great one for kids. If you've got a kid's novelty print, or maybe you've got a fishing print for your husband or something, and the size of this is a really nice lap size for a recliner. So if you have a guy that wants a blanket in his recliner, this is a great size and a great one to do, and highlight a fabric that makes him feel special for his special quilt in his chair. Okay, so we like to strip piece as often as possible. So you're going to sew 3 strips together, and that's going to be the center of your block. So we need a big overall shot. Can you see all that?
Yeah. Do you have the fabric requirements?
Yes. Let's talk about fabric requirements, because I know a lot of you already have purchased your fabric over time. So let's look at this. Let's look back up here at the quilt, Steve, so that they can see where the fabric is used. And thank you for reminding me. I was going to tell you this and got sidetracked. Okay, so you have just a little bit of the red, tattered and torn, and we have 1 yard for it down here. You're going to use about 1/2 yard in this little skinny border, and then you'll have some left for binding if you want to have it for the red binding, or if you're going to do a flange with your binding, I would add that little red piece in there for the flange. So you have plenty of red at 1 yard for your border and for something in the binding. Then in the black star, we have 1 yard of that, and you'll have a little bit of that left over. Not a lot, but a little bit, but 1 yard of your black star. Then on your black check, we have down 1 yard for it. You could also be able to use that over in a flange also. You'll have a little bit of that one left over. And then in your blue floral, we have 3 yards. And I really suggest to you that because this blue floral is so pretty, and in your pattern we talk about cutting it selvage to selvage and how many strips to cut. And in the pattern, I did not say anything about cutting this the lengthwise of your fabric so that you don't have to piece it. But I highly, highly suggest that, and that is a hint that you need to write down for this, is to cut your border the length of the fabric so that you don't have to put a seam in it on all of the different sides, because it's big enough that you will have to do that. So if you don't want to have a seam in your border, cut it the lengthwise, and you should cut it first. And then the rest of that fabric, you'll have plenty of fabric and room to get your squares here and your squares here. Plenty, okay? All right. If you have any other questions about that, let me know. Now, also on the fabric, I have...
overall size?
Oh, the overall size is 58 by 74. So 58 inches here. So see, if I was laying in a recliner, that's plenty of fabric to go over me so no cold air gets up underneath. I don't want cold air coming under my quilt. And then 74 inches is 6 feet. So pretty nice size to cover up with in a recliner. If your guy wants to tuck it under his toes and have it up over his nose during the football game, you might want to add a little bit more in the border section. But it's really a really nice size for a nice lap quilt or nap quilt on there. Okay, any other questions on that? Maybe while they're getting it in there. I also want to tell you about why this is called Soldier's Comfort. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a history buff. I love history. I always like to look up the history of a block or the history of an area, or just always dig a little deeper to find out more about whatever it is that I'm doing. Even if I watch an old movie on TV, I went back and watched the movie Giant this winter. It was one of my mother's favorite videos or movies, and so I went back and watched it. And then, you know, it was kind of before my time when the movie was going on, and so I didn't really know the history about the movie. So I went back in and looked on YouTube and researched the actors, and of course Elizabeth Taylor, one of her first movies, and Rock Hudson and James Dean. Went back in and researched a little bit more about them. I heard my mother talking about them and telling stories, and then also researching the movie. And the movie was made kind of in the southwest area of Texas, and being a Texan, I wanted to learn more about that. So I love to dig a little deeper and find out more than just what's on the surface of whatever it is I'm doing. So this quilt is called Soldier's Comfort. Now, during the Civil War, the Southern men went off to war, and they went quickly. When things started getting out of control, they signed up quickly and went to war. And the South, of course, didn't exist as an entity at that time. There was no army, there was no uniforms, there was no issued items of guns or sleeping bags or blankets or backpacks or any of that. So in saying that, whatever the soldier left home with was all that he had to prepare him and help him as he went into war and went into battle. So the families would quickly piece together a quilt. So that's why this one was made. It was so quickly put together. So they quickly put together a quilt, pieced it together, and the soldier would fold it up and roll it up, and it fit perfectly to tie it either across his shoulders. And many times when you look at old pictures, you'll see the soldiers actually in combat running into battle, and they have that quilt strapped across them. And of course, some even had bullet holes in them. I've seen some in museums that even had bullet holes that went through their bedding and their sleeping bag rolled up. And of course, so many soldiers died on both sides during that time, and with so much death and destruction and the time that it was, there wasn't anything to really wrap the soldiers in to bury them with. So a lot of them were wrapped in their death in the comfort of the quilt and buried in their Soldier Comfort Quilt. Also, the soldier, when he went to bed at night and was covering up with his quilt from his family, it was called Soldier's Comfort because the soldier knew that whoever had made that quilt for him was back home praying for him and hoping that he would return home quickly, safe and sound. And so it was to comfort him mentally as he went to sleep at night. And so that's the history and the story of Soldier Comfort Quilt. I think that's pretty cool story. Okay, so any more questions before we get into our teaching?
I don't think so. I think we're good.
Okay, so let's look at our block. Let's look at what we're actually putting together. So these are the sections that you're going to have, is the rectangle section at the top and at the bottom, and then the center section. Now, a lot of times people teach to cut all of these squares individually, these rectangle pieces individually, and the center square individually. But if we can sew these together in 3-part sections, so we did this in a strip piecing of a 3-part section, and we did this one in the piecing of a 3-part section, and then go in and cross cut our sections to get our units, then they're going to be faster and easier and more accurate without individually cutting. There's so much human element when you individually cut all those pieces and try to sew and put them together. So what we did was for our center sections, and this is called a strata. When you put several strips together, it's called a strata or a section. So we did a strata of the center section. And then we did a strata of our rectangle sections that go on the top and the bottom. And these measurements are all the same, and your pattern will give you those measurements. It's a simple quilt. If you're doing it on your own, then just graph it out and figure out what sizes you want. But know that these outside strips are the same size in both stratas, and your middle strip is the same size in both strata. Because when all of these come together, they have to match up and be the same size. So these have to be the same size, these 3, and of course these here all have to be the same size. Okay, now let's talk about, you could even be doing this from scraps. And lots of times when I make my samples, I am using just a little piece of fabric, kind of like this, and it's kind of like an end of bolt, but this is like the end of our big rolls when we put them on the machine. So I want you to look at the unevenness of this outside edge here. And so it's like, okay, how can I cut this and make this to go into my quilt? Now, when you're coming in and cross-cutting into your stratas, if your check is a little bit off, you don't have to worry about it because you're cutting it into smaller sections. So as long as you cut it pretty straight, you're going to be okay with worrying about your plaids doing too much dancing around. So I'm going to use my grande ruler because it's one of the things that it does is it helps cut your strips and your pieces in there. So I already have a nice cleanup cut here on my little scrap piece or the end of my bolt or the end of my roll. And whatever size you need, you're going to come in here and cut what you need. Now, of course, I don't have any small cuts of my blue floral here, but I'm going to do these as smaller cuts so that you can actually see what I'm talking about how to use scraps. Now, we also have talked about a project that's coming with all of your little leftover pieces of any width and any scrap size. And so part of what I'm going to teach you in this is that little skinny thing. So let's say that what I need for my quilt that I'm making is 2.5-inch pieces. So once I have a nice cleanup cut, then of course hand flat, start down here before your fabric starts. Make sure you have part of your ruler hanging off and come in here and move your hand up. I'm kind of exaggerating, but move your hand up as you go and get your strip that you need, and then just keep going in. Now, just so happens this one I'm making is 2.5. Make sure it stays straight. It moved just slightly. And so I'm going to come in here and do another 2.5 and see how that's going to get all of my piece. So I'm going to cut my next section out of this little scrap. And I'm going to immediately flip it over and make sure that I have a good enough fabric on that back side. And see, I have a nice clean cut. And I can look over here and see that I had enough. So I know that this piece didn't have any of these jagged edges in it. And so this would go in my, either in my quilt or in my stash bucket of however wide the strips are. I would put it in a basket or a bucket. Now when I get to this little end scrappy piece, I want to make sure that I can use the best of this big piece here and not worry about the little pieces here. So I'm going to go in and see look down here at the bottom, and I'm going to look up here at the top, and I'm going to come in here, and I can get a 1.5 inch piece pretty good out of it. So I'm going to come in here and cut my 1.5 inch piece. And then I can see when I open it up, I can see where it got to where it was not good anymore. So about to my fold there, it was good. So, and you can also tell if it's kind of starting to ravel there. So this would go in my stack of however wide it is for my little scrappy quilt we're working on. And this would go in the bucket where any size would work. So I'm going to cut that little tail off. And this would go in the bucket where any size of scrap would work. And as I get to the end of a piece of fabric, I go ahead and cut it up into whatever and put it in my baskets just like this, so that when I get ready to sew, and eventually on one of our free Wednesdays, we're going to pick up one of these baskets and we're going to start working with these pieces. Okay, question? I heard the bell ringing.
No, we're good.
All right, so let's cut our section. And I'm going to come over here too, just like you would be here with the selvage edges. So I'm going to flip this around to have my selvage edges. And I'm going to do a cleanup cut. Now, since this is not stacks of fabric, I can do a cleanup cut and then move my fabric around. And I'm going to do that on one of these, and then I'm going to show you on the other one how to do a cleanup cut and not move the fabric. Okay, so on this one, I'm just lining up a horizontal line on the seam because you want to keep this straight underneath. You can't just go in here and look at the bottom and make your cleanup cut because your piece may shift and then your seams won't match up. So make sure you look at a horizontal line on one of the seams and then look down here at another horizontal line and make sure that your piece is staying, your fabric piece is staying straight, those seams underneath the ruler. So this is your cleanup cut and you want it as nice and straight as possible. So then you would have to turn your fabric, and since it's not a stack, that's okay. But if you had a stack of fabric, you don't want to move it after you start cutting. Now this section, whatever the width is of this strip here, that's what you're going to cut these that are on the outside edge. So let's lay this out again so that you can have that visual right in front of you as I work. So what we're cutting is this top and bottom section. So see how your square here, which is your square here, has to be the same width to match up with this one. So these are all the same width on the outside edge, and whatever that is, that's what you're going to come in here and cut this section. So no matter what size you're making. And once again, you look at your width and make sure it's all nice and good, and then look at your horizontal lines underneath and see how well your seams are doing underneath there, and then make your cut. Remember, hand flat. Just pick up your ruler a little bit and move it. You don't need to move your ruler a whole bunch and throw it over and then have to try to find your lines again. And just do what I call eat into your strip. So you're just going to keep eating into your strip. And if you're keeping your lines horizontal here with your cutting, then you probably don't have to make a new cleanup cut because it's going to stay straight. But if it starts to get crooked, then you've got to go back in and do a new cleanup cut. So just continue until you have the number that you need. I think our quilt has 18 of these main blocks in it, and since you need 2 for each block, then that would be 36 of these that you would need. Now, I also want to show you how to use your reference book to know how many strips or how many pieces you may need in here, okay? So let's say that when we look at each square, we have 4 squares that need to go into a quilt, and we have 30, we have 18 blocks. So 4 times 18 is what?
72.
72. Okay, so let's go to page 55 in your book. Is it 45? Let's go to page 45 in your reference book. And the chart at the top in the very middle, it says how many squares per strip. So you can know how many strips you need by using this little chart. And if we need 72 of these squares, and let's say the square is 2 inches because that's easy to do in our head. So we're going to come down here and find the 2 inch, and of course that would have to be cut size. And when you move across, it says you can get 20 of these out of one strip. So that means that you would have to have 20 into 72. You'd have to have 4 of these strips to get the number that you need. So if you're going to have 4 of these strips, then you're probably going to make 2 of these stratas. So you're going to make 2 that look just like this, because it says you're going to have 4 strips and you have 1 on each side. So you're probably going to have to make 2 of these to get enough of these for your 18 blocks. So that is a great, great, great chart. Now let's look at this one. Let's say that this middle one is 4 inches, just because that's easy to do in our head. So let's go in here and find the 4 inch on our chart, and it says 10. And so the average width of a strip is 40 inches. That's just easy to figure. And so, of course, 4 into a 40 strip means you're going to get 10 of these out of a strip. So if you have 1 of these in each block and you have 18 blocks, then you're going to have 2 strips. So the 2 strips here would correlate with the 4 strips that you have here. So you can see how to use that to help you know how many strips you need. Okay, so after you go in and cut all of those pieces, then you're going to come in here and do the same thing with your other one. Now, I wanted to show you on this one how to cut it without moving it around. So we're going to do it and turn it this way. Okay, so this one is the center section of our quilt. So whatever the center is here, that's what you have to go in and cut this one. So let's just say that this center is 5 inches. So I'm going to move in a little bit more than 5 inches, okay? So I'm going to move in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm going to line up my horizontal lines here and here. Keep it flat, keep it straight, and make my first cut. And then you can turn it and come in here and make it the exact measurement that you need, whatever it is. See, and because I overcut it a little bit, then I was able to come in and cut off that. Then you don't have to move this piece, and you're ready to go in and cut the pieces that you need. And remember to keep your horizontal lines on your seams and to keep it the width that you need for your strip. So there you go. And you would just continue going into your piece to get those sections on there. Now, after you have, next one is a good tip or a good hint that you need. I would suggest that you make your 18 blocks and get your sewn size. Our cut size is going to be your personal private measurements that make the size. So if it's an 8.5 cut, then it sews down to 8. So if this is an 8.5 cut, then you want this to be an 8.5 inch cut. But even though this is supposed to be 8.5 when you get everything done, you have those PPMs, those personal private measurements. Every time you cut, sew, and press, things move to either make things larger or smaller. So make all of your blocks that you need and then measure your blocks. They may be 18 3/4. They may be 8 3/4, or they may be 8 1/4. Then you can go back in and cut these perfectly to match up to your sewn blocks. Anytime you're using a solid setting square next to a sewn block, don't cut those. Don't cut those. Wait until you have all of your sewing done, then you can go back in and cut. Now, obviously, if your block is smaller, which is what happens most of the time, because with your seams, you kind of eat it up a little bit if your seams are not good. But if your block is larger, and this is smaller, then you're going to have trouble when you start putting it together. And this is a big piece. So your main tip today, your main skill that you need to get out of this class to add to everything else that you do is that don't cut these when you're cutting these. Wait until this is sewn and then go in and cut. In fact, I don't ever stand at my cutting table and cut a whole quilt out. I cut pieces, I put them together, I make sure my colors are looking right, I make sure my cutting is correct, and that everything is coming together the way that I want. I make a few blocks, I look at them, make sure everything's the way that I want, and then I go back in and I cut a little and I sew a little, and I cut a little and I sew a little. And so many times people have unfinished projects because they've cut this whole quilt. They thought they wanted it a queen or a king, and either their colors don't look right, they've gotten bored with it, life has happened and they've put it up, and now it's not exciting to go back and get to that unfinished project or that whip, work in progress. And so it turns into a UFO and it never gets finished. If you just had 10 blocks instead of 20 blocks, you could put those together and then use the rest of that fabric in another quilt somewhere and not have all this stuff cut saying you have to be this, dictating what that has to be. So cut a little, sew a little, cut a little, sew a little. Whenever you decide that you are ready to be done with that quilt, no matter what size it is, then be done with it. Don't think that you have to continue on with it if it's not what you love. And if you've gotten bored with it, just be done with it. Make it whatever size it is. It doesn't matter. And move on to your next project. So that's another good tip and hint for you. So the other good tip and hint for you today is to not cut your sewn block into all of these individual pieces, but to work on them in a strata and sew them together in strips and then cut them and put them into your block. So that's all of the teaching on the Soldier's Comfort, just really a pretty simple quilt. If you have questions, then go ahead and get them in, and you can always text us later when our live class is over. Let's talk about color if you wanted to do this in a different one. So if we look at our dirt quilt down here and look at some of these colors, I think you can see, if you wanted to do that quilt in some of these colors, how we've used the dirt with the red tattered, the beige check, and the dirt tattered. So if you wanted to do the light here and in the border, then I would suggest maybe some of the red and black with the in the border here. And then in here, I think if you did the light here and the beige check here, and maybe the red in the corners here, that would really pop. Now, if I put the red in the corners here, I would not do the red as my first border. I would go in and use one of the other colors for my border. Now, if you're doing this in the red floral, okay, if you're doing this in the red floral, you can use the red, white, exactly where the blue is. You can use the red dirt for where your check is, and you can use the red star in the corner and your red floral. You can go in and use those and get a really pretty look. If you also want to do this and have more light, then you can go in with some of the beige check. That would be really pretty also, to use the beige check in there with the red star and the red floral. So you can see how all of our different fabrics just blend together. The flavor comes together well to where you can mix and match any of those together to make the quilt exactly the way that you want it to be. So in this quilt, let's go over those fabric amounts again so that you can decide what you want to do on yours. The red we used, we had 1 yard, and that will give you some fabric that you can use for a flange or in your binding. The black 4-star is 1 yard, and you're going to use most all of that for the quilt, not really have any of that left. The black check is 1 yard. You have a little bit left if you wanted to use it for a flange, and then the blue floral, or your binding, and then the blue floral, you have 3 yards, and I suggest that you cut your the width of your borders, the lengthwise, and then go in and use the rest of the fabric for your big square here and your big square in the middle. And you'll have some blue floral left over too. I never give you just a really tight amount of fabric. I always give you room in there to make allowances if you maybe wanted to add a row, or if you had some mistakes and you needed to have more fabric to do that. I always give you plenty of fabric in there in the quilt. So any questions about Soldier's Comfort?
I think so.
Okay. Or fabric amounts, or the fabric sale, or anything. Okay, so in your notebook that I hope everyone is making, I see lots of pictures on the Facebook pages and lots of emails. Remember to work on your notebook and go in and make each option. You can download these pages from Premium if you're a member, or you can go in and purchase them on the website if you want, or just use cardstock. It's up to you how you want to make and work on your little notebook. We've had a lot of questions over the last week about 2 different ones, and so we're going to go over some of those again. So first of all, I'm going to go through and demo the 3 main options, and then we'll come back in and look at some of this here. So now, to trim your options, you can use the mini, you can use the original, or you can use the grande. I'm going to use the mini here. So to make the option 1, you're just going to put the 90 on the ruler into the corner of your fabric square. So there's my 90 right in the corner, my line's right over the seam, my grid line right through the point. Now, one of the questions this week was about flying geese and keeping it square, but you have to do that on every block. You have to make sure that you're staying square. So what that means is after you make your first cut and you put the ruler on here for your second cut, I just kind of popped it in here and lined it up, and it looked great, and it's going through here good, but it wasn't lined up out here where I already cut the best. And so I just looked at here and I was like, the edge of the fabric is not straight with the lines. Not that it lines up perfectly with the lines, but it was crooked. They weren't parallel. So I went in here and just adjusted it a little bit more. It's still lining up perfect, but now it is square out here. So before I had it kind of like that, which looked good, but it wasn't square out here. So I just kind of eased it over a little bit more to keep it square. You've got to look, once you start cutting and you get ready to make the next cut, you have to look to make sure that you're staying nice and square. So now when I put it in here, I have to look here and here to make sure the outside edges are staying square. And that will really help give you some perfection. Okay, and there's the option 1. And we talked about in the video last Wednesday, which I think would have been, I don't know. Anyway, the one, today's the 20th, so the last Wednesday. So we talked about we went through all of these options in really depth, and we showed a lot of quilts that this one is in. So go back and watch that one if you haven't seen it. Now, the next one of the main options is the flying geese. So to make flying geese, you're going to leave the 1/4 of an inch on 2 opposite sides, and you're going to go in and trim right up to the tip on the other 2 sides. So you can see how basically one system, one ruler, one tool makes everything, and it makes them any size that you want. Now on this one, we're going to do the 2-step, which means you step over 2 lines, and it doesn't matter if you go to the left or the right, and put the tip of that line right in the tip of the square, black line over the seam, keep it square. You have a new grid line that goes through that point, and trim it. And it looks like you've trimmed off that 1/4 of an inch, but really what you're doing is you're making a seam allowance in here because we're going to cut it up and get 2, and you're moving that point up that triangle side. So opposite side 90, step it over, and then look and keep it square. And then we're going to come in here and cut it right through those sharp points. And I look at my lines to see how nice and square my piece is. Now, if you don't get it nice and sharp in that point, if it's too blunt or if it's too far out, it's going to affect this length of your piece. And there's my two perfect flying geese, just like that. And it should be nice and sharp right down to that tip of there. Now, you can go to your options charts in your book, and they start in on page 34. We've already talked about one of the pages of charts today, but your option charts start here on page 34 and 35. So if you know you need a flying goose a certain size. Now see this cut edge? Another question was I need a flying goose a certain size, and the size was let's say a 2.5 by 4.5. And she didn't know if it was a cut size or a sewn size. And you have to work with a sewn size. And when you look at your charts at the top, it's going to say what is the sewn size or what is the cut size. So if there's a raw edge on there, and your book tells you this, but I have these two little, well, where'd they go? I don't know where they went. But anyway, if you look at your piece and it has a cut edge on it, it's the larger size. It's a cut size. When it's completely sewn in a quilt and there's no raw edges, it's a sewn size. And anytime you're doing any type of building of a quilt, pattern adapting or whatever, you have to work with that smaller size. So if this is a 2.5 by 4.5 cut, it's going to back down to a 2 by 4. And so on my chart, it says you need a 2 by 4 sewn. Then you just move across. It tells you what size of center square, and it tells you what size of strips to sew around. So, you know, you can make any size that you want, anything that you want. Now, the other main option, there's 40 options, 17 with the square, and then the others have a diamond in the middle. Those all have the main units, and then you build from those. And so these are the main units. So for half square triangles, we're going to get 4 half square triangles out of our basic square. And we're just going to trim up to the tip on all 4 sides. Remember, we did that on 2 sides of the flying geese because we were cutting through there. So this means we're going to cut through all 4 points. And you want to make sure that you keep it square. And keep your seam allowances and your points right where they need to be, either sharp or 1/4 of an inch. So this one, we've gone right up to the tip on all 4 sides, doing that 2-step, keeping it square as we go along. And it looks like this. So it looks like the option 1, but we don't have that 1/4 of an inch off of the point, because now we're going to come in here and we're going to cut through those sharp points. And once again, I want my ruler to be right through those points, but I look out here to make sure that my unit is staying square. Don't let it wiggle. Careful as you pick it up, because you want to be able to cut right through the other section, the other half. And here I have 4 half square triangles. Now, one of the emails that we got, I think yesterday or today, said, how do I make a churn dash? Well, the churn dash is just 4 half square triangles. Well, she said, do you have a pattern for churn dash? I'm like, if you know how to use your charts, you don't need a pattern for churn dash. So this is the block for a churn dash. And you have just a little separating section in between. And then inside, you have your half square triangles on here. So let's think about how to use the charts and how to make this any size that we want. So do you see how those half square triangles go in there? Like this. And you just have that little section part in between. Now this section part in between, can be any size that you want in between. So that really helps to make your block. So let's say that you're going to use, and remember you have to work with these sewn measurements. Let me get this scooted over here. So let's go to our chart and see what the largest sewn measurement is. So when I go to my option 4 chart and I look on here, the largest sewn measurement is 3 inches. That means a 3 inch. That means this would be 3 inches. So if I have a 3 inch half square triangle, and that's going to be 3 inches sewn, S for sewn, and I have another 3 inch sewn half square triangles without anything in between, that's giving me a 6 inch sewn block or a 6.5 cut. So whatever I add in here will make that larger. So if I put a 2 inch sewn section here, then of course these are going to be, this is my dark half square triangle. And usually a churn dash has a pretty wide one in between there, in between your, so that means this is going to be a 2 inch sewn or 2.5 cut. And that means these are going to be a 2.5 cut by a 3.5 cut. And then of course these are my half square triangles for a churn dash. So by using the chart and using the largest measurement on there, I can get a 3, 6, 7, 8, an 8 inch sewn or 8.5 cut just by using that largest size. Now if the size you need is larger than what's on the chart, then just go back to the option. So the option here, option 4, so go back to the option 4, and there's this little gold corner here, little gold nugget, and it's the magic math to make these larger. And basically what that magic math does is it says to take the cut size of the half square triangle you need. Notice it says cut size. Multiply it times 1.414. Add a 1/2 inch. And round up if necessary to a size that's easy to cut. And then when you get your little basic square made with that measurement for the center square, then you take your center square, divide it in half and add a 1/4, and that's how wide your strips are. And if you'll make a note that over here at the very beginning on option 1 basic square, the magic math is how do I know the size of the strips that surround it. Now that's going to bring us to another step that I want to teach you here in just a moment. So remember that this magic math is here for strip size, and then your magic math is here to make your half square triangles larger. So everything you need to make any quilt, any design, any block is right here in the reference book. Now before we move on to that other one, I want to show you this one. This is the Hunter Star. Here's a color variation. Here's a scrappy color variation. And then here is another kind of brighter batik variation. And this is just, we've done this multiple times over the past year. But taking what I've taught you with the half square triangles, this is what you're going to do. You're going to have two plain squares. Or you can do these plain squares with half square triangles, depending on the color design that you're wanting to do. And then these little corners in here are just half square triangles, one set of 4 half square triangles. And so you can see here in the block how you have 1, 2, 3, 4 half square triangles in the corner here and here, a plain square, and a plain square, and that's your hunter star. It's just that simple to do. And then you can see it here in this one. And then there it is where we've drawn it out. So that's your hunter star, just that simple. So before I show another teaching on something that people have emailed about, do we have questions, Steve?
What was, wasn't clear on the terminology about splitting the half square triangles.
When you make the basic square, what's the words that you use to do it? Is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you make your half square triangles,
Where the half square triangles are separated, that would be the sashing or whatever? Or what do you call it?
on the churn dash.
Uh-huh.
So like here, well, this is just like a little plus sign. It's just separations, rectangles, and you can make them any size that you want, little or big, in between.
That's just when you're building your own
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yeah, when you're
And that's
building
a
your own
churn dash
thing. Yeah.
Between the...
Yeah, I just call it a separation or a sashing or a plus sign. And you can
Plus
build
sign.
it any sign, plus sign, yeah.
Okay.
You can build it any size you want it to be to make it larger. And this is in a lot of different blocks. So, you know, don't fuss around with these being weird sizes and trying to think, oh, you've got to make something that fits into a certain corner. When these are so easily made any size you want to make your block larger. And so like with Starflower and some things, sometimes we have this separation in the middle. Just always remember that you can make this any size you want. Okay, so now this is one that I've shown in a couple of different videos this past year, and then I also showed it last week. And it is option 5, when you can put anything in the middle. So actually what we did is we put options, when you learn the options, option 5 is put anything in the middle. So like a 9 patch, a 4 patch, and we talked last week and showed some quilts with just a plain 4 patch and 9 patch in the middle for your basic square, and then you get the triangle units on the outside edge when you get it trimmed up. Option 6 is when you use your imagination and you start mixing blocks together. So in this next one, we're going to use flying geese in the middle, 3 of them, and they're going to make a rectangle in the middle. So when you get to figuring your strip sizes to go around, because it's a rectangle, not a square, you have to figure 2 sizes of strips. So let's look down here at our work. So this is the 3 flying geese that are sewn together, and see how that center unit is a rectangle, not a square. So you can see the width here of the strips are wider on the short end of the flying geese, and the width of the strips are wider on the wider side of the flying geese. So just like we went to figuring the strip sizes at the page 15, we're going to go back and do this same equation to figure the smaller width and the larger width, okay? Now, I want you to look at this beautiful block here where we put 4 of these together. So you can see here is one of the blocks, and see how the points go out. And here's another one of the blocks, and the points go out. So see, this top one here is like this with the points going out. And then the next one beside it is points going out. And then one below it, points going out. There's so much you can do with this, and this is a great quilt to make with your scraps. Now, let's look at it, and let me see what I need to do here about drawing. Okay. So the cool thing is that when you put your 90 in the tip of that new square and square it up, it turns into a square again. It's just crazy how that works, but it turns into a square, which is fun to work with. So let's say that these flying geese in the middle, let's say that we've got 3 of them here. Okay, so our little strip of fabric here. So see how this is a strip of fabric that turns into that triangle. And then we have this one here. And then of course this one, to make it a square, has to be a wider triangle because you're sewing it on a wider side. So this one is on the shorter side, so the width is shorter or smaller. This one is on the wider side, so it must be wider this way. Now, when you figure your strip sizes, your magic math here down here at the bottom, it says measure your square, divide it in half, and add a fourth. So let's just say for a normal square like this, let's say that it's 4 inches, divide it in half, makes it 2, and then you add a fourth. So that means this strip size is going to be 2 1/4 on the width. So we're going to remember that as we do this one. Okay, so when we measure this side of it, it's 3 inches. Well, it would be 3 1/2 cut. You have to work with the cut size on this. So it's 3 1/2 cut. So if we divide it in half, that makes it 1 3/4. Plus a fourth means 2 inches. So the strip on this side has to be 2 inches wide to sew it on that side. So now when we measure this side, it's 2 inches. So 2 1/2 cut has to be the cut size when we're doing this magic math to figure strips for the outside edge, because we're working with a cut square in here that has to be measured. So if you divide that in half, that's 1 1/4 plus a fourth equals 1 1/2. So that means the strips that you sew here have to be 2 inches, 2 1/4 wide, and the strips that you sew here are 1 1/2 wide. If you don't, then these corners are going to be too blended because the strip wasn't wide enough. Now, I'm going to show you a way to cheat on figuring this size, because there's not a chart in this book to do it. But in your diamond book, you can go to any of the charts, and the very first one that you can use is option 22 in your diamond book. Because the diamonds are rectangle shapes, let's look at okay, so when you look here at your diamond after you get it sewn the first time and trimmed up, it's a rectangle. So when you sew around it again until you get a square, you're working with the same thing you are here with different widths and sizes. So that's the second time that you sew around. So any of these options that have a round 2 on it, you can come in here, and wherever you see it says cut size of surround strips row 2, and when you come in here you see there's 2 sizes. So one side would be 1 1/4, the other side 1 3/4. So come in here, and in the second column where it says what is the first column where you get the size of your rectangle in here, come in here and find the size that's closest to your rectangle, and of course go bigger on your rectangle if you have to choose. If the size of rectangle in the first or second column isn't what you have, then just bump up to the next bigger size, and then go to the section where it has the 2 measurements in it in that column, and that will give you what you need to do. So option 22 has it. Option 30 has it, has a row 2 with 2 numbers. So anytime in the diamond book you see row 2 and there's 2 numbers, option 32, option 31, option 35, you can go in and use that chart to help you with your strip sizes if you don't want to figure it. Okay, so there's a good tip and hint for you on that today. So any questions on any of this that we've taught so far today? Anything, Steve, before I move on to the next section?
No, not finding anything.
Okay, all right. Okay, a couple of other things that I wanted to, of course, tell you about and keep you updated on what we're doing. Of course, the fabric sale will last to the end of Sunday night, and that includes the free shipping of $150, and that is on kits or books or fabric. And of course, your floral fabric is on sale. There's also some other fabrics on there that are discounted that we are done with, and so go in and check all of those out. And a couple of, did you get those new ones added, Steve?
I think so.
Okay, so a couple of the new fabrics from Welcome Home that we had too much fabric of are on there. And if you need a Welcome Home backing, you can get a 5-yard and get a really good price on it for your Welcome Home back. So this is the Soldier's Comfort that we taught today. Now the next one here is what we're teaching next week. This is next week, Wednesday webinar. And we've had a lot of questions from Premium Club members that know that it's coming. And I want to do a shout out to Sherry, who is in our Premium Club. And she'll help answer a lot of your questions in Premium Club, along with Carol, Kay, Kathy, Lisa. They all do a great job of helping you in Premium Club and can get to you sometimes quicker than what I can. And Sherry actually made for me my samples for the blue Soldier's Comfort, and she made this beautiful one here behind me using the panel for the Transcontinental Railroad. Now I'll just kind of step out of the way so that you can gaze your eyes upon it. And we're going to talk about it and fabric amounts, because there are a couple of the train prints that are on sale. Not all of them, but some. Okay, I'm going to hold this up first, up here, and then I'm going to put it down on the table so that you can see all of it. So this is the train panel here. And I want you to notice how it has the railroad tracks that go down each side. And then the panel in the middle. And this is some of my historic fabrics that I've made with the Transcontinental Railroad now being 150 years. So we're going to teach this next week in the Wednesday webinar, but I want to show you this to help you with fabrics so that if you want to make the quilt, you can get in on the fabric sale. So what we did was in the very center, so let's see if we can look at a block. Okay, so this is one block, and I want you to notice how the center of it has the train panel, and then it has two rows the corner ones. Okay, I want you to notice how it has this row around it, and this one is actually kind of a border in it, so don't let this outside row here fool you here with it, but we do want this in the corner. So there's a little bit of illusion. So we have the center. We're going to talk about the panel first. So here you can see how this is part of the panel. And this is all fussy cut. We really went into detail on this one when Sherry and I were talking about it and she was making it. All of the panel part is really fussy cut to get the beauty of the picture in each placement. You can do it so it's not as fussy cut, and we're going to talk about that. But first we're going to talk about it with this extreme fussy cut. So here you can see this is part of the panel. We have the black star, and then we have more of the panel here and here. This is more of the panel here and here of the design. This is the red element here, and this is the dirt, tattered and torn. So those are your fabrics. Now the next one here is a really beautiful star, and we fussy cut these very carefully. This is an option 1. This is your half square triangle section with 2 plain squares. A nice fussy cut plain square here. And when you fussy cut from the panel, you can see how it puts a darker in there along with your picture. And then we tried to block putting this fussy cut in here, and it really just kind of mushed it all together. So we decided that we really did need the other fabric of the dirt in here that is just plain to help give you more beauty of the block. So those are the 2 blocks that we did. Now I also want you to Well, I lost my train of thought. I'll think of it here in a minute. Now, in this one next to it, this is the next side of it. So this, and this is all what's across in the center. So let's look at it, Steve, here down on the table. So this one goes, we fussy cut it out like this in this corner.
I can't see that.
Okay. And we fussy cut it out here in this section. So looking at it horizontally like this, we fussy cut this, and then we went up a little bit to get all of this, and that first one is just the train. So it goes down from the bottom of the train to the top to get the size that we needed. It goes in there just like that. And then we move down a little bit and have this. And then even this house part right here, this house part is the same in all of these centers of the quilt. We kept them the same in the center of that block. So this one is very detailed fussy cut. The main part is this section here. So this is a section, this is a section, and then we came down here and went down here and cut the next section like this. So we have 5 main blocks in the quilt. Let's look at the quilt again. So we have 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5. I don't know how well you can see those at the bottom. So you're going to have 1, 2, are we back down here on the table? So you're going to have 1, 2, 3, and then 2 over here on the side, 4 and 5.
I can't see your left side at all.
Okay, so one panel, let's move it over here. So one panel basically does just the center of these main blocks here. And I want you to also notice that in the corners here, we did all 4 corners with that little railroad emblem, which is only found in the panel right here. Now you don't have to do that, but we did. We had the fabric in, we did. Now also, you have to think about if you're making your quilt larger, you know, you've got to have enough fabric that you have this for the border, because we've gone in here and cut, we've cut and off and stripped off the train tracks for the border, and you don't want to piece those. So you want those to be however big your quilt is. So this quilt, oh, I don't remember the size of it. It's a square because we wanted these all in the corner. Now you can make it wider and you can make it longer, of course, if you want the quilt bigger. It is, it's basically 60 by 60. I figured it was probably about 60 the way that it was up there. So it's 60 by 60. So you've got to have at least 2 yards of your piece to get all of your train tracks, to get enough of your train track for your border. But when we're doing kits for it, the kits are $149, and they are on the website, right, Steve?
Yes.
Okay, the kits are on the website. The kit. If not, it will be.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it is.
Okay, so it will be on the website. If it's not, it's $149, and that includes your pattern, and it also includes 5 yards of the panel, so that you can do it larger or you can do it as fussy cut as we have. Also, when you order the 5 yards in the kit or separately, you get the 5 yards for $50 instead of the regular $12.50 a yard. So this is what we're going to be teaching next week. And also next week, we're going to start with our block of the month.
Block of the week.
Block of the week. So our block of the week will be on Mondays, and it's a paid class. And if you want to join, you can join. And you can go right to the website and sign up for it. And it's $50, and that includes your pattern and your video teaching, your live video teaching every Monday. There's 12 blocks, so it'll be 12 weeks, and then we're going to go into the settings, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about settings here in today's video also. So once a week. Now you'll get the pattern each week when we send you the email for the class. You don't get the pattern early. Nobody gets the pattern early. You get it each week with the teaching. But we want you to watch the video, then cut your stuff and make yours. You can use our kits. You can have a blue kit or a red kit, or you can pull from your stash. And there's pages that you can download that are with the January New Year's, or where are those pages? If they sign up on the website?
They're in, yes. They're also with the module.
Okay.
If you've signed up or in
If you've
premium,
signed up, you'll have PDFs there. If you're premium, you'll have PDFs there. If you go back and watch the January 1 webinar where we talked about it and introduced it the very first time, there are PDFs you can download there that has your blue kit, your red kit, or your pull from your stash. Now, pulling from your stash is great. Do that. If you want to pull from your stash, but you want the quilt to have more of the look like we have, then go in and order 4 yards of dirt and order your 3 yards of red or blue for your borders, and then use your stash for the inside. Or those of you that have had my fabric and have the gold vine or the black star or whatever, you can look at that sheet, you can see what you have, and then go in and just order the bits and pieces that you need to make your quilt, and just use what you've already got and then add the pieces that you need. So no matter where you're at, whether you're ordering the kits or you've got our fabric and you just need to add a little bit more to it to make it, or you're starting from your stash, all of those things there help you do it. Really a beautiful quilt, and in each block you're just going to learn more and more and more. So I highly recommend that you, if you're premium, of course, that comes with your information. If you're new to Square and Square and you don't know anything about the Premium Club, then you can send us an email at steve@squareandsquare.com, and he'll send you all the information about Premium Club. Some of the cool stuff about Premium Club is every time we come up with a new quilt or a new program, that teaching is automatically included. And then like today in the Soldier's Comfort, that pattern is included in the premium. Not all of the patterns are included in premium, but a lot of them are. If they're a very simple one, then they are included in there. And so, if you think about if you did Welcome Home $50, that we just finished, or if you did Block of the Week $50. Also, when you sign up for premium, for like 2 weeks, you get a discount off of your books and rulers. And so, you can pretty much have your club paid for very quickly, if you're interested in what we're doing and you want to be a part of those classes. So I want to take down, I hope you're excited about Block of the Week starting next week, and the train on Wednesday next week. And the one that we just finished, if you're brand new, is Welcome Home. And the thing that, since we're just finishing it, and I was looking on the premium Facebook page at people posting pictures of their finished quilts, I made a post on the premium page, and I said so many times people buy a kit or they start a class and they never get it done. And I was so proud of the group because of the live teaching and because of the Facebook page and because of Premium Club, people were staying motivated and excited, and they were getting their quilts done. And some of them were like, we just joined and this is the very first Square and a Square quilt we've ever made. So that's really an exciting part of Premium Club, to be able to enjoy that and be a part of our group. Now, if you want to do Welcome Home, you can also have that video teaching and pattern for $50, and you can go right onto the website to do that. So we do it as a live teaching, then all of those videos are archived into a special place, and you can go back in and watch those, and watch them over and over again, and get your quilt all completed and done. And that one's Welcome Home. Once again, you can use your stash. Our kits are all gone for that one, and we have a few of these fabrics that are on like the 5 yard or the 7 yard if you're wanting backing. Like we have the red square dot, we have the red twig, the red daisy, and those are great to go on the back of your Welcome Home or any project that you're working on. So I think that's about it, unless we have any questions that have come in, Steve.
I don't.
If you have questions
Somebody
about,
had a question about, is the $50 for all 12 weeks? And
yes, the
I think
$50.
there's actually
Oh,
13
that
weeks.
reminds me. The $50 is for all 12 weeks, and then there'll be a week on, so 13 weeks, there'll be a week on setting the quilt. So let's talk about settings. So in your pattern for block of the week, this is your setting, and it's these extra little stars that are in here, and we're going to give you the information for that early. I'm not going to teach it till the end, but you should be able, if you want to, you can go ahead and get started on it, because it's option 1s and option 3s, and I think after our first or two blocks, even if you're new to square and a square, you'll be able to go in and start making your units for that. But I really, this year, what I really want to highlight is how to take whatever you've got, whether it's a solid square or a pieced block, and the different ways to set it together. So in the block that we did today, in the quilt that we did today, let's look down here at it again. This quilt is actually 2 setting squares. So of course a setting square can be a solid block, and so we talked about not cutting your solid block until you have your piece block done, but this is a setting block. But this block right here can also be a setting block. So if you had a wonderful pieced block here and you use this as your setting block, then your quilt, it creates this secondary design going on in with your blocks. So both of these today were setting blocks of what we taught. Now on the train one, what happened to my train? This red block with all the triangles in it, is a setting block in this quilt. It could be a block all by itself. It's a beautiful block all by itself, just like this. But it's also a setting block, and where it makes this run through your quilt. So we're going to talk about how you have your main blocks and then you have your setting blocks, which is your secondary. So we're going to show all through this year different ways to take your blocks and set them together. So you may want to take your blocks and not set them together this way and pick up one of the new ideas that we have on settings. I hope that makes sense on the settings.
What size will the block of the week quilt be? Do we have that?
Yes, let me see here if it has it on here. I think when you go to the website, and my notebook with all of my little information is down on my cutting table. So I don't think, oh, here it is. It's 64 by 79. 64 by 79 is our block of the week. So you can always make 2 blocks, make it larger, whether it's, or just add, depending on how big, just adding another row on the side or along the bottom. I think they're all 12-inch blocks too, if I remember correctly. Yeah, they're all 12-inch blocks. So you can add 12 inches to the width and the length really easy by adding one more row on the side and one more row at the bottom. Any more questions?
Will the block of the week have its own tab in the portal? The answer is yes.
Yes, you'll have your own webinar location in the portal.
It'll be a module.
A module all on its own.
Yeah.
And I think you've got
And
it
you'll get
made in there. You
notification.
just haven't activated it yet.
Yes, it's ready. I just need to activate it, and I'll give you an announcement, and it'll show what the module looks like.
Okay, he'll give you an email announcement on it and show you what the module is and activate that here real quickly between the next few days.
Let's ask if people like to have the notifications of like this webinar today or anytime we do one. They get like maybe a 2-hour, 1-hour warning and a 15 to 30-minute warning.
So you can get multiple announcements.
We've been doing that, and I just wondered if that's helpful.
We've been doing multiple announcements that it's 15 minutes away or it's tomorrow or whatever. So do you like that you're getting multiples, or do you just need one? I'm not sure if he can personalize it for each person.
Not really.
Not really, so it has to be for everybody.
I just don't want to
but we don't want to
Anyway.
bombard you with the
Yeah.
emails on it. So put that in a
I'm,
text
I'm
or
trying to do something with texting, but it's a little bit more complicated. I haven't had any time.
we've been, oh, and that reminds me about the orders. We have probably about 10 orders sitting there that we need to do something for. Everything's there ready to ship, but we either need to put a new roll on the machine and roll that one or something. Since we're down to the end of our sale, then our stacks and stacks of fabric we've had cut are depleted, and so we may have to go back and roll another roll of fabric to get the cuts ready to go. So we have about 10 orders sitting there that are missing like one or two things. We hope to get those done today or tomorrow. Then we got about 10 orders or so that either came in yesterday or in the night or this morning that we don't have done. So the point of all of that is that we're very, very close in having all of the orders completed up until yesterday afternoon. And then whatever orders you get in between now and the weekend on the sale, we should be able to ship those out pretty much immediately. And
since they are going to watch before they start sewing,
yes, we want you to
they can
watch
still order. Yeah.
before you sew. So there's plenty of time to order a kit for the blue or the red, and they're the same. The blocks are all the same. The only thing that changes is your border. So if you order a blue kit, that means you're going to have a blue border, and if you order a red kit, that means you're going to have a red, and the green in the flange and in the little border stay the same. And there's just one block, so it's, not like a big heavy teaching every time. So even if you don't, start with us on Monday, you'll have plenty of time to get caught up. A lot of these blocks can be made in just a really short time.
Will we be having a Friday webinar?
No, we won't have a Friday this week. We'll wait for the sale to be over so that we have plenty of time to get all the fabrics cut and shipped out. And hopefully next week we'll do a Monday. We'll do the Monday, start the block of the week on Monday for the paid class. We'll do the free Wednesday webinar and we'll do the train. And then it's possible on Friday next week that we'll start our Surprise Friday. Some of you guys will like Surprise Friday and some of you won't. So some of you will be interested in it and some of you won't. And that's just the way it is. But hopefully the Surprise Friday we can start next week. And if we do, I'll tell you if this week with the orders and the sale and everything with it wrapped up, we'll know Monday and Wednesday.
Yeah.
And we'll tell you in the webinar.
Yeah.
And there'll be a special place for you to sign up for it. You'll have to sign up for the Friday ones separately, but once you sign up for it, you'll be in it for all of it.
Oh, I forgot the block of the week cost. The kit is $225 for members.
If you're
or
members,
$275.
I don't have that on here. If you're members, it's $225 for the kit. If you're not members, then it's $275, but that includes your $50 for the class
so
and your pattern.
If you've already done your $50, then you can do a member.
Yeah, if you've already, if you're not a premium club member and you've already signed up for block of the week and paid your $50 and you want the kit, then of course it's $225.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Any other questions? We're going to close out here. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday for our teaching and Wednesday for our free webinar. And hopefully Friday, all of this next week for our Surprise Friday. If you have any questions, remember the text number 817-713-2879. And that's for, help with fabric amounts or send me a picture or whatever. If you have a question about technology or where's my order, it's best for an email. And we get about 60 to 100 emails a day, so be patient with us. We're working as hard as we can and as fast as we can on everything. Okay. Anything else?
I think that's it.
All right. Good to see you all. Have a great weekend.